Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the AeroCool AirHawk case, which has been sitting in my back room for a bit too long. However, I've finally taken an evening to unbox this thing, take a look at it, and build it up. Why didn't I just unbox it before I hit record? Everyone thinks they want to see unboxing, but there's nothing interesting about unboxing, and it's just a nuisance when you're trying to start the video. Roll the intro. Okay, so this is the AeroCool AirHawk chassis. It is a mid-tower ATX chassis. And as you can see, the big deal with this one is the front, with those two huge fans there. Big, wide open mesh front, two huge fans that are RGB fan at the back as well. It's an airflow case. You get the idea. Lots of air goes in the front, cools the components down. So the last AeroCool case I looked at was the AeroCool 1, the Eclipse I think it was. And I actually rather liked it. AeroCool make budget cases, and the big tell on a budget case is the actual body of the cases kind of all look the same and are kind of all the same on the inside. See, what happens, to the best of my knowledge, what happens is that a lot of companies, a lot of budget companies making budget peripherals and cases and so on and so forth, they don't make their own stuff because, you can design a case. That's not difficult to do. But going and getting it manufactured means tooling up a factory for it. And that's hella expensive. So what you do is you find a Chinese supplier who is already making a product that fits the requirements of your product. So you find a Chinese company that is already making cheap ATX cases. And then you choose from what they make and you customize it. So in this case, AeroCool will take an existing bit of fluff. They'll take an existing design and they'll customize it with their own front panel, because this is just a plastic front panel. That is fairly easy to get made. And they'll say, cool, okay, we want this. We want it with USB 3. We want it with a tempered glass side panel. We want it to have a big front, open, wide front bit, etc., etc. And we want it to have some RGB fans in there as well. So they get all this packaged up, and then they have their branding on it, and they ship it as their product. So they find an existing product and they bring it to market. That's how it works. So there's nothing inherently wrong with this. However, sometimes it sometimes causes an issue with cases where you'll look at a case and you'll be like, I'm sure I've seen something that looks just like this before, kind of thing. Now, as I say, that starts off on what sounds like a negative note. However, it's basically just me acknowledging the fact that this is a budget case. Don't expect the world from it. However, none of this just immediately makes it a bad case. As I say, everything is made in China, so that's kind of the way it works, really. So, with that preface in mind, I look at this and I see a lot of familiar things. You see sort of the same power and reset switches that you've seen on another case before and stuff like that. And the side panel, these tempered glass side panels tend to be less designed than another case. So what I mean by that is, you can see that this again has got this side panel style fitting, which means that it can fit on the same kind of case that would also allow you to fit a traditional non-windowed side panel. And whereas when you look at a quote-unquote premium brand case, the side of that case would have been designed from the beginning to have a tempered glass side panel on it that will be in a particular thing. Whereas in this case, what they've done is they've made a tempered glass side panel fit to a traditional style side case. And this has pros and cons. In a way, I actually quite like the sliding side panel that you get on cases like this, because I really hate the 4 thumb screws because they're a pain in the ass to remove. It's slow, it's annoying, and you get fingerprints all over the glass. Whereas with this one, we've got 2 metal thumb screws at the back. They're even captive. You unscrew those and it just slides off. So, you know, in a way I like this, but one of the things I don't like about it is the fact that, you know, the tempered glass side panel is, oh, we've got another peel here. Oh, yes. The tempered glass side panel is just basically double-sided taped to these plastic parts at the back and the front that hold it in place. And that's fine, it works. It just doesn't, you know, it doesn't feel super premium. And like this one, the fit and finish, I'm not going to lie, this isn't as good as the Aero 1 Eclipse was, which again was effectively, you know, a Chinese bought case. But I feel like the actual build quality on it was much better than this. You know, I'm actually not convinced about the quality on this side panel, which makes me a bit sad. However, I am starting out by nitpicking and just pointing these things out. And that kind of concerns me, because the case, as of making this video, is currently £76 on Amazon. And that's quite a lot for a budget case. I was kind of hoping that this thing was going to be sort of 50 or 60, kind of, you know, that kind of area. Because like at £80, you're into Corsair territory, you know, and Corsair cases don't have these problems. They've got terrible USB 3 ports, as I'll keep harping on about, but they don't have issues like, you know, plastic fittings on the side panel and stuff like that. Anyway, but with that in mind, you know, with me sort of giving you a rough idea of what kind of build quality to expect on this, let's investigate it to see what features it's got and see how that works. Because, of course, it bears mention that to a certain extent, the build quality only really matters when you're actually building in the case. Once it's built up and it's sitting on the desk, it doesn't really matter because it's what it looks like and how it performs that matters at that point. So let's take a look inside. So looking on the inside, we've got the sort of the standard meta layout for any modern case, really. Power supply shroud, which is metal. Across the bottom, we've got the cutout there, so you can fit in a big 360mm rad down the front. And if we just take off, we've got, like we had on the Aero 1, we've got one of these sort of internal dust filters. I didn't like this on the Aero 1, and I still don't like it now on the AirHawk either. They should have put a foam filter in front of the fans. Yes, I know it blocks off the view of the fans and a little bit of the light. However, this will block off significantly more airflow, and it just doesn't look, it's not very nice, basically. As I say, didn't like it on the Aero 1, still don't like it in this. I would like that to change, because again, I feel like it really can't be difficult to just stick any kind of filter on the back of the front mesh that would just immediately be a better solution. So again, I criticize just because I want it to be better. So behind that mesh filter, we've got 120mm rails. We've got holes that line up with 140mm fans, but they're kind of just sort of there. They're not really rails as such. There's just some holes which look like they've kind of sort of been drilled through. But I'm guessing you could probably, I mean, I've got a 140mm fan here. So, I mean, I can match that up, and that kind of matches up. They don't really line up. I don't really like the fit for 140mm fans up front. And the reason why I point this out is if you've got a 280mm radiator, that's going to make this kind of awkward, really. I'm not sure if that's going to work very well. I mean, you could make it fit. You know, you could bodge a 280mm radiator in there, but it wasn't really built with a 280mm radiator in mind. 240, 360, no problem at all. 280, I don't know. And considering we've got these huge fans up front there, I think those are 250mm, those fans. Considering you've got those there, you kind of would imagine that you'd want to have, you know, a big radiator there that these fans are blowing air into, perhaps. But on the flip side, of course, you've also got a fair gap there. There's, you know, about, I don't know, 20mm or so gap between the fans and these rails here, which means that if you put a radiator there, you're not going to get a huge amount of static pressure going through that radiator as it is. So I'm not sure how well this works as Radiator. Personally, for me, I like front mounting my Radiator, so I kind of want to know if that's actually viable or not. If it's not viable, then we've also got mounts up the top here. So up the top of the case, yeah, we've got 120 and 140mm mounts. And looking at the amount of space we'll have there, I don't think there's going to be any issues with clearance to your RAM, which is, so once you've got your Radiator there and the fan stacked on top of that, I don't think there's going to be any issues with clearing either VRM heatsinks or tall RAM modules, which is actually a very real problem that I do see in some cases, especially Corsair cases like the 220T, which definitely has height issues. Where they've tried to make the case as low as possible, they've actually massively compromised how useful the top mounts are. These ones definitely good. You could definitely stick a 280 or a 240mm Radiator up there, no problems at all. So that's absolutely fine. The back panel is kind of stamped tin, and it has sort of snap-out PCI slots. But as I said earlier on, this is a budget. This is a budget case, so that's basically what I would expect anyway. The rest of it is there. We've got the 120mm fan here. This is on rails, so it can move up and down slightly as well. That is an RGB fan that goes to some kind of RGB controller that's in the back. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, around the back of the case we've got this. I'm pretty certain that's the same RGB controller that was in the Aero 1 Eclipse. That has been pre-fitted to this one. That's just on a sticky pad, and it's basically all pre-plumbed, just about. And they've got the reset switch plugged into that, which you would use to change the RGB color. The power switch is there, so you'd have to peel this back to then plumb that into your motherboard. So it's intended that you peel the wires back like that and run that in. Failing that, you can also just run this reset switch to your motherboard if you want to have a reset switch, which is up to you whether you have that or not. You could just get any old switch and connect that up, or failing that, I believe this can this be connected to your motherboard? Yes, it can. This does also have the digital RGB headers, both for the Gigabyte one and the literally everyone else one. So you can plug that into your motherboard and control the you can control this RGB controller from your motherboard if your motherboard has digital RGB. I'll demonstrate that later on because the motherboard I've got to put in this does have digital RGB, so I can demonstrate both of those in action. As I say, same one that I saw on the Aero 1 Eclipse. I quite liked this controller. I don't like the fact that it's got these 6-pin fan connectors on them. Basically, the idea of these is there's a single wire coming from each fan, and that carries fan power and RGB data. However, the disadvantage is that you can't just plug any old fans into this. You've got to find fans that have this same connector on it. And likewise, these fans can't be used with anything else other than this controller. So, for example, if you turned around and said, oh, I've got lots of fan headers on my motherboard, I'd rather do it all from the motherboard. You can't do that. You can only plug these fans into this controller. On the plus side, the controller does, as well as the RGB input, it does also have a PWM fan input, so you can send a speed control signal to this hub as well. And again, I'll demonstrate that in action. So you plug this into, say, chassis fan 1 on your motherboard. Then in your motherboard BIOS, you'd set chassis fan 1 to, I don't know, 60% speed, and it'll run all of the fans connected to this at 60% speed. The rest of it, we've got a couple of 2.5-inch mounts there, which I won't use because I never do, but you can mount 2.5-inch SSDs there. We've got a couple of 3.5-inch SSD hard drive trays here that you can put normal hard drives in, or your SSDs as well. And these are toolless fittings, so you don't need to screw you need to screw an SSD into one of these using the 4 holes in the bottom. However, a 3.5-inch hard drive snaps into these little bits sticking out the sides. So toolless fitting on your hard drive cage, that's fine. This whole cage can also be removed as standard. it looks like, yeah, it can also be moved back. It can also be moved in that direction, closer to the power supply. However, this is quite a short case. So you could move that closer to your power supply to make room for a big radiator going down the front, but that's going to leave almost no room for your power supply. So you've kind of got a bit of an awkward situation there. When I get to building, I'll take some measurements to tell you how much space is actually available there. I'll put those on the screen now. So for people asking, can I fit X power supply in? Go to the website, find out how long your power supply is. If it's longer than the number that I'm showing on the screen, then you might have a problem. So with the front panel removed, you can see the big, huge fans up front here, which give the case its name. It's the AirHawk Duo, to be precise. These things should ensure that you get really strong airflow through the entire case, even at low speeds. The idea is the bigger a fan is, the more air it is moving at lower speeds. Smaller fans can move lots of air, but they're noisy when they're doing it. So the idea is that bigger fans are quieter. Generally speaking, fan size doesn't make an enormous difference to performance these days, you know, like between 120 and 140 and stuff like that. We've got plenty of actual cubic feet per minute in most fans. The difference is whether it can do it quietly or not, because, you know, any fan will shift a lot of air if you ramp it up to 100%. It's just most people are not going to be impressed when their computer is running at 100%. Unless it's one of those people that don't realise their fans are all at 100% and just live with it. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how well these work. I'm not a big fan of this kind of design. I'll level with you. And that's, you know, and kind of the same goes with the, you know, the style of the front panel here. I'm not a huge fan of this style. I think it would have been nicer if they'd made that flat rather than have the bottom sort of stick out like that. I'm not too keen on the wedge design. However, I do like the way it's got the same carbon fibre effect on the inside that the Aero 1 does. That, you know, that is a really nice effect. And yeah, I think it looks fine. Case looks are subjective. You know, I liked the Corsair 275 airflow a lot, and a lot of people in my comments were just like, that front panel's hideous. You know, it's up to you guys. You can like what you like, and there's going to be people there that like this. There's always going to be people who are just like big fans, you know, open mesh, love it, you know. So if this is what you like, then this case is for you, basically. However, there's not a doubt in my mind that there's going to be lots of air going through that, so that'll do the job. I think I've waffled on long enough now, so let's build something in this thing, and I'll tell you what it's like to build in, and we'll check out how well it runs. Before I roll the music, I'm also going to power this thing with AeroCool's recently released Aero Bronze series of power supply. They sent me one of these as well. So these have recently come out. AeroCool have had a budget power supply called the Integrator series for a long time now. And that has been an okay power supply for budget builds. However, now they've got the Aero Bronze ones here. And these guys are brand new. They have Japanese input capacitors in them, apparently. And it's a big, heavy beast, actually. That feels very confident. So, again, they've got the same AeroCool style grill mesh that they use on these. It's a very compact box, this. That's quite nice. If we look on the side of it, as you can see, we've got 650 watts, and it can do 648 on the 12-volt rail alone, which is always a good sign that the power supply is going to be a reliable one, because it's going to deliver as much as it says on the label just to that 12-volt rail, which is where most of your big workhorse components are being powered from. So, always a good measure. Not an authority. You know, it's not a certainty that that makes a good power supply, but it's a good indicator. Bronze certification, decent 12-volt rail, you'll probably be fine. Whereas a lot of the power supplies at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of good brand power supplies by like Cooler Master, EVGA and stuff like that are all 80 plus white. And I'm not super into 80 plus white. Give me at least a bronze, please. Let's get to it. Right, I've done the bulk of the assembly. Let's do some test fits for for a water cooler. I've got an old Corsair 280mm radiator here with two 140mm fans on it. So firstly, let's just offer this up to the front of the case. Ugh. Not with the hard drive cage there. You could butcher that in, but it's not intended to fit in. That is not intended to be a thing. A 240mm. Do I have one of those out of a case? But again, I'm not seeing any holes that really line up in any useful way. Again, you could butcher it in there, but again, it's not intended to have a front mount radiator. Which, I mean, I don't know. Like, there are if you remove the hard drive cage, you would low mount the radiator and then these rails would start lining up. But you've got to ditch the hard drive cage there. Right, so what about top mount? If we're not front mounting, we're going to top mount. So, 240mm rad. Stick that in there. Make sure that lines up with those holes. Yep, it does. And that clears the top of those VRM heatsinks. No problem. Loads of room for fans. That's fine. No problem at all. And you can put that the other way around depending on how your hoses want to sit. Yeah, figure that out. But there's plenty of room up there for the 240. No problem at all. So, what about the big boy? Not this one anyway. That's too big. The tanks of the radiator are not clearing. So the tanks are these end pieces, and these guys do not clear the sides of the back and the front of the case. I wonder if there are slightly more modern ones which have smaller tanks on them, but yeah, I'm going to call that a no, which is a shame because that was really close to fitting. But yeah, those tanks are too long, man. It was not clearing this section here, or the back of the case for that matter. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing really. For water cooling, 240mm rad is your only real option. And this is a compact case, and it's a budget case, but also being an airflow case, I kind of feel like it's aimed at people who want bulk cooling, you know? So, it's up to you whether that's a big deal or not. If you're not planning on using a 280mm radiator, there's no problem, basically. So, yeah, if you want to use a 240mm radiator, you stick that up the top and she'll be right. Job's a good one. And sadly, I can't put that 240mm radiator that I had in because I don't have the AMD mount for it. That's in my home computer. So I guess we're gonna Wraith Max RGB Spectrum it. Let's go. Please remember to turn your power supply on. Okay, it lives. That's a lot of light from those fans. Cool. Does it post? Right, that's our build done. So, what do I think of it? Well, through this video so far, I've pointed out a lot of sort of ropey areas that I'm not super pleased about with this case. There are a few rough edges, you know. The tempered glass side panel, you know, you've got your tempered glass window, which looks great. I just don't like the mounting strips they've used on it. It's left edges and visible glue strips and stuff like that, which just don't really inspire confidence. However, you know, when it's sitting at arm's length on a desk, it looks fine. So, you know, it's, although I've nitpicked and pointed out a lot of things that don't look great about this case, but this is only when you take a close look with a magnifying glass. And like, there are things like, you know, I kind of got het up on not being able to put a 280mm water cooler in there, and how, you know, the front panel, it's there and it's got rails, but it's not really useful for anything. However, again, you know, you're not, the only thing you're going to have on this computer are those two huge fans at the front anyway. So, you know, it doesn't matter that you can't use those front rails for anything. And once again, once it's sitting on a desk, you don't see them anyway. So it doesn't really matter. So, working on things that I do like about it, just like with the Aero 1 Eclipse, the RGB on it is incredibly versatile. You know, I can press the reset button here, and I can step through. You know, we've got the standard issue 7 color RGB, so we can set that to a nice clean white look if we want, and you can just have just soft white on everything, which looks great, or you can have blue, red, or whatever other color you want to match your system. And then in addition to that, at any time, I can hold down this button and it'll flash like that, and it's now under software control. So if I just open up, we've got MSI stuff in here, no reason, it's just what I had lying around. And if I can go into the MSI Dragon Center, and I can change the color of this to, say, green. And when I change that in software, now we have green. So, you know, the point is that this RGB system can either be hardware controlled or it can be software controlled. And the reason why that's good is it means that it will work with whatever you have available to it. Because, you know, a lot of the problems with having buying RGB stuff is a lot of people, especially when they're buying in the low end, they can often fall into traps where they don't have what they thought they would, where they don't have what they need. For example, they bought a case that has ARGB fans, but because they've got a low-end motherboard, they don't have an ARGB controller. Whereas with this one, I've got an ARGB controller on the motherboard, so I can do software control, and I can have it all synchronized with the RGB RAM and graphics card and stuff. However, and the CPU cooler if I bothered to connect the USB cable for that up. However, if I didn't have ARGB on my motherboard, I can just press that reset button, and I can be under hardware control. And then I can just dial in one of the presets and just say, okay, well, I want it to be blue. So let's just step through that. And now we have blue. And as you can see, you get nice, rich color from it as well. You'll notice that we do have, you know, dots of LEDs on those front fans. The diffusion on them isn't great. The back fan has got a little bit of that, but overall it's a much smoother light on that. However, you know, again, it kind of comes with the territory with these big fans. That just tends to be what they're like. The amount of light output you get, though, is fantastic. You know, it will provide a modest glow inside the case. And then if you wanted to, you could even add in an RGB strip, either just analog RGB or addressable RGB. You can plug that into the controller you've got at the back, and you can add that into the system. So this is a really good system that you can build upon as well, and it's compatible with most things that are not proprietary. So yeah, as I say, the RGB really brings this together. As usual, I'm not going to do lots of thermal tests and stuff like that because I don't really have the setup for it, although I am working on that. In the future, as soon as I've moved shop, I will start doing thermal tests and stuff. However, just working on what I've seen of this thing, those front fans shift a huge amount of air, like a lot of air. I was, you know, I don't want to say I'm blown away by them because that's just too much of a pun to deal with. However, literally, you can take the side panel off, put your hand like back here, and you can feel the draft from those fans. Most of the time, case fans have only got a range of, you know, a couple of inches before you can't feel the airflow from them. The airflow will be there because you'll have pressure from those fans, you know, pushing air into the case. However, with these ones, there is an actual wind in the case. So in terms of actually having a mass airflow through this thing, being an airflow case, it delivers that in spades. The only problem with that is again, this front filter, man, this front filter's bad. It was bad on the Aero 1 Eclipse and it's bad on this. Yeah, it's no bueno. I've just left it out because the amount of airflow that filter restricts is kind of defies the point of this case, in my opinion. And I would rather just go no filter and just dust the case out every couple of months or as often as needed. You know, I mean, if you've got it sitting up on a desk and you're not in a super dusty environment, it'll be fine. You know, if you have this sitting down on the floor, it won't be fine. However, if it's up on a desk, you'll be okay. But again, if it's one thing I would say to AeroCool is, guys, please just get a coarse foam filter on the front that will do absolute minimal to dampen the light output, but it will provide just a basic coarse filter that will catch pet hairs, cat hairs, dog hairs, stuff like that. Because fine dust is going to make its way into your computer anyway. Whatever you do, you're going to get fine dust in the computer. However, and the big killer is just avoiding pet hairs and, you know, and aardvarks and stuff like that. That's what you don't want going into the computer. And just a coarse filter will be enough to alleviate that. So yeah, as I say, that front filter really destroys the airflow from the fans, and that's a bummer. However, apart from that, I do like it. The aesthetic of the front case, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not super into the wedge shape of it. However, it's someone's cup of tea, and you know, it's functional basically. You know, for someone who is buying a case and they're like, no, I don't care. I just want all the air in the case. That's exactly what you're going to get from this. You're going to have no concerns about that. So on that front, it's very good. Value for money. At the time of recording this video, this thing is 75 quid on Amazon UK, and I think that's a little bit dear. It would be nice if it were like £70 or just under the £70 marker. £75 is getting dangerously close to premium brand territory. And by that, I mean like a Corsair case. You can buy Corsair cases for 80 quid, decent ones, like the 275 Airflow, which again is a decent airflow case. And when you buy a 275 Airflow for £80, you're not dealing with, you don't have dodgy rails, you don't have a back that flexes at the touch of a hand, you don't have the horrible snap out PCI plates and things like that. The build quality is a completely different world, except for the top panel, of course. So yeah, as I say, the price is a bit close to Corsair territory, but it's still less than the price of a Corsair, a modern Corsair anyway. You can still buy the old Corsair cases, but they look kind of dated these days. They don't have tempered glass or anything. However, looks-wise, I like it. You know, I built this last night, and I was a bit sort of, I was getting tired and stuff like that. But I came in this morning, I looked in the side panel, I was like, you know what, that looks really nice. You know, I looked at it, I'm like, that looks smart. You know, when I came in with fresh pair of eyes that hadn't been looking at the way the panel fitted on and stuff like that, I came in and I thought that looked nice. So on that perspective, I can say, yeah, if you're looking at this case, if you like the look of it, you like the RGB, you like the big fans, this is a good case to buy. If you're the kind of person who is going to be sort of really looking at the sides and going, oh, the panels don't quite fit together perfectly, oh, there's a slight gap there, and oh, the back flexes a bit, then this might not be the case for you. You'll just see the imperfections in it. However, if you can look past its imperfections, this is a case that is going to keep its contents very chilled out. And one could argue that that is the primary objective of a case. So on that front, great case. I like it. One thing that occurred to me while I was editing this video as well regarding the price of the case is I don't want to criticize the cost of this case too much, because while I think the cost is too high, we're also in October 2020 at the time of recording this, and the cost of everything is higher than it should be right now. And a lot of that cost comes down to shipping costs and things like that, which means budget things are disproportionately affected by this, because manufacturing costs are going to be about the same, but the cost of shipping stuff everywhere is really high. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this case have such an arbitrarily high price on it compared to what I think it should be at. So another time, possibly where you are now while watching this video, this case may well be much cheaper and much better value for money. That could be in 6 months, it could be in 12 months, I don't know. either way, keep that in mind before you criticize the price of this too much. So that's where I'm going to leave this one with you. I'll let you guys come to your own conclusions about it. Big thanks to AeroCool for sending this in, and big thanks for sending in the AeroBronze power supply as well. That power supply, I like that a lot as well. It's got nice flat cables on it, which again, for a budget power supply, it's all that you can ask for instead of having horrible rainbow power supply cables. The performance from that is going to be absolutely fine, and that's probably going to live in this case, or I'll put it back in my Aero one. I'll put it in my Aero one Eclipse, depending on which one I use. Really like the power supply. So yeah, thanks to AeroCool for sending this stuff into me. I still like the AeroCool products, and I look forward to seeing more of them in the future. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stick around for the end card, or check down in the video description to see my support links, including my Patreon and my Discord server, and probably other things if they get added in at a later time. Bye for now, everyone. See ya.